So after a week where I've been mostly doing playoff related video, where I've been doing previews and review of these play-in and round of 16 games, it's time to return to the moving forward series. And today for the moving forward series, I am going to be talking about Atlanta United, where this is probably the first time ever in their franchise history. We're heading into the offseason. They definitely are in a transitional period. And that there is no doubt, if you're an Atlanta United fan, this is probably the most painful year that they have endured in MLS. And after the first 3 years where they have been absolutely exceptional in MLS and kind of set the standards of what expansion team are expected to do, yeah, this was definitely a huge step back, and a lot of things kind of went wrong, and a lot of pieces that kind of just toppled. Well, all started in the beginning of the year of what turns out to be a very long year for Atlanta United to have to endure this season. But first of all, in terms of the record, they finished the season with a 6-3-14 record, and they had 22 points. They only scored 23 goals this season, which is the second fewest in the Eastern Conference. Only FC Cincinnati scored fewer goals than Atlanta did. They conceded only 30 goals this season, which is right around the middle of the pack, and that they have a goal differential of -7, and they finished 12th in the Eastern Conference. Now, for the MVP of this team, yeah, there wasn't really a lot of choice that I could actually put in terms of MVP, because there wasn't really any standout player whatsoever from this team this season, which is kind of a shocking thing to say, because you would always say that at the end of the year, after a successful campaign, or even in a bit of a rocky campaign, you would still think Atlanta would have a standout player. But I'm going to go with Brad Guzan, because at time this season he tried his best to try to bail out the teams, and also I thought his form, unlike most of the players, was still pretty good compared to compared to the previous year, and that he's one of those players that did not heavily regress as what we seen from this season. Now, for the most disappointing player in this team, there is definitely a lot of candidates that I could have gone for. I could have either gone with Pity Martinez, but obviously I decided not to, because I usually don't put the most disappointing player or the MVP for players that basically got sold it during the season. I could have definitely gone with Ezekiel Barco, or even some of their striker that was supposed to be in place of Joseph Martinez, like Adam Jean, Kubo Torres, Jurgen Damm, and all those players. But I'm actually going to go with Miles Robinson, and this is kind of a little bit controversial for me to include him, because yes, I understand that he did miss a lot of this season, especially in the latter part of this season when he suffered an injury and it turns out to be a season-ending one. But yeah, this was a huge regression for Miles Robinson. And remember last year where he was supposed to be tallied as one of the best center back in this league and one of the biggest prospect coming out of the U.S. men's national team. Yeah, after this season, that's just, he definitely suffered a huge regression. And, for his sake, if he does want to get back to the U.S. men's national team and still considered to be a hot prospect, he needs to definitely get back strong next season and definitely improve of what has been just a huge disappointing year for him. But yeah, besides him, as I said, there's a lot of candidates I could have gone with the most disappointing player. But, since I've been going with a lot for my MVP and most disappointing player, I've been going with a lot of attack recently. I just thought that, maybe I need to decide to put a defender in there, and that's, of course, is kind of my main reason why I decided to choose Miles Robinson rather than Ezekiel Barco. Now, that being said, Barco has also been very disappointing this year, and I just, this offseason, it'll be interesting to see what they're going to do with Barco. Obviously, we know that they already sold Pity Martinez during the season. Are they potentially going to sell Barco? And if they're going to sell Barco, are they going to sell him off to Europe, or are they going to just, are they going to be in a desperate move where, they're just going to ask anybody if they want to take Ezekiel Barco, whether send him back down to South America or go with the Pity Martinez route, which is go to the Middle East? They'll definitely be listening to offer in terms of trying to sell him this offseason and get some of cash on the way because of that. Now, in terms of the top goal scored for Atlanta United, who would have thought that John Gallagher at the end of the season would be at the top goal scored list with 4 goals? I mean, it's just that kind of the season where once Joseph Martinez went down with this team, pretty much their attack was almost non-existent throughout this season. But then you got Adam John with 3 goals alongside with Brooks Lennon, Emerson Hyman, and Marcelino Moreno with 2 goals this season. Top assist leader, you got Jurgen Damm with 4 assists, Ezekiel Barco with 3 assists, Brooks Lennon's also with 3 assists, Adam John with 2 assists, and Franco Escobar round up with the 2 assists. Now, what went right for Atlanta? I think they definitely got a foundation piece despite how rough this season has been. And, their transitional period, I think, kind of all started a couple of months back where, once they decided to get rid of Frank de Boer, it kind of really triggered a period where Atlanta was going through a transitional period where they're trying to maybe think about who they're going to get in the future and who is going to be there, or they're starting to think about even getting some of their DP out of the team and bring in some new ones. One of them, of course, was Pity Martinez going to the Middle East, and they kind of seem to use that money to get Marcelino Moreno, who I think he is definitely a good foundation piece. And I know he only played a handful of games at the end of the season, and for most of the games he's definitely kind of lacked a little bit of fitness for this team, but there's times where he has shown that he is definitely the real deal, and he kind of remind me of what a good number 10 like Miguel Almiron was for this Atlanta team that can really help this team in terms of pulling the string going forward. So I think he could really be not only a good foundation piece, but he could really lead the line, and I can't wait to see how him and Joseph Martinez partners in terms of the front line, and we're going to see a lot of Marcelino Moreno and Joseph Martinez kind of dynamic duo going forward on the attack heading into next season. Now, the other thing that went right for them is that at least they cash in on the Pity Martinez sale, and that, I know they would rather sell some of their best players eventually going to Europe, but obviously knowing the fact of how disappointing Pity Martinez has been in his time with Atlanta United, they just felt like it was kind of the right time where they might potentially just move on from him, and hopefully one of the suitors will eventually pay big money to get him off of their books. And it seemed like a Middle East team was interested in terms of that, and they got a cool $17 million out of that, although they didn't really get the full amount because they did had some sell-on fees that they had to give to River Plate as part of the deal when they got Pity Martinez to come to Atlanta United. And then the third thing that kind of went right is that despite how bad this season has been, people also forgot that they were actually in the playoff hunt, and they were for a very long time in a good spot in terms of making the playoffs. But yeah, then that last part of the season where they went on a very bad run that kind of just crippled their chances in terms of making the playoffs this season. Now, what went wrong for them this season? Well, losing Joseph Martinez obviously is the biggest thing that went wrong for Atlanta United in this game, but really, I thought that was the first piece of the domino of what would be many of it that will fall from this season, because after Joseph Martinez suffered a season-ending torn ACL, you can definitely see that things were going worse and worse for this team. And by the time when we get to the MLS's back tournament, yeah, it basically showed. Like, they were a team that was shell of their old self, and that they were the only team in the tournament to have got 0 points and also scored 0 goals in terms of the MLS's back tournament. And also that was those result was in the end enough to finally get rid of Frank de Boer in terms of coaching this Atlanta team. And then obviously the third thing that went wrong for them is, of course, goal scoring. But I guess the fourth thing I would say that went wrong for them, as I said earlier, is the fact that they had that miserable run to end the season where they got like 1 win out of the last 7 games during the last couple of weeks of the season. And when you're in that kind of form to head down the stretch of the season and you're trying to make a playoff push, that is definitely not going to be enough to trying to make a playoff push or even sustain your spot in terms of being above the red line in the Eastern Conference. Now, moving forward for this Atlanta team, obviously, we know next season they're going to get Joseph Martinez back, and there's no doubt the attack is going to be much better next season once they get Joseph Martinez back to this team. This offseason, obviously, the big question is going to be who will be their next head coach. I don't think Stephen Glass is probably going to be staying with this team on a permanent base. I mean, he tried his best to kind of ride the ship throughout the season, but you can also see that I just don't think he has enough in terms of well, I just don't think he is basically could be a good option in terms of being a permanent head coach. And I think Atlanta, they were pretty much hoping to just kind of ride this season with their interim head coach, and then they think about in the offseason if they can find a hire either from South America or maybe a high-profile head coach that is going to be taking charge of this team. Now, the other thing that I think Atlanta is going to be moving for heading into this offseason is that there's no doubt that there's going to be a big-name DP coming to this team. As I said before, I think most likely they're going to get rid of Barco this offseason, which will open a DP spot, and I won't be surprised if they're going to once again go down to South America looking for those hidden gems again and bring in another young talented South American to basically develop them and eventually sell them off to Europe, because that's basically the formula that Atlanta United has been doing since day one of this team. And this is also a team that's not afraid to spend big chunk of money to get some young, decent kind of players. So yeah, this is going to be a very interesting thing off season for Atlanta. And then, as I said, this is really the first time that Atlanta has to deal with this in terms of dealing with pretty much what almost every MLS team had to endure at least once in their franchise history, which is they have a bad season. Now they're heading into the offseason in a transitional period, and how are they going to figure out a way to get back to those top level Atlanta United teams from their first free season. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this moving forward series? If you're Atlanta United fans, what do you think went right for your team? What went wrong? And most importantly, moving forward, what do you think this team is going to do to get back to those kind of level where they are considered a top tier team in the Eastern Conference and also an MLS Cup contender in the MLS. But let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I, of course, will see you guys next time.